Here you are. Good afternoon. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I do believe we have a quorum. I'd like to get started. I know there are a number of folks meeting upstairs with the CAO at present, but I think we've got a quorum here. Leo John, would you mind doing roll call for us?
Steve Nelson.
Present.
Jonathan Wisby. Randy Heyman.
Present.
Leo John Arnett, present. Mike Karam.
Present.
Andy Copland. Jessica Williams. David Aubrey.
Present.
Bo Murphy.
Present.
Michael Hecht. Aaron Spears.
Here.
Scott Boyle.
Present.
Paul Flower.
Present.
Sandra Lindquist.
Present.
Mr. Chair, we have a quorum.
All right. Thank you all very much for being here. I've got a presentation which I believe was sent out to the group earlier today. Thank you, Kristen, for running slides for us today. If we could get to the next slide, just want to remind folks the purpose here of the Infrastructure Coordinating Council is for us to improve coordination among the city departments, the utilities, and infrastructure partners. Again, with the goal of improving efficiency, reducing conflicts, and making this a city that's easier to live in and do business in. Some of the progress, if we go to the next slide, since our last meeting in June, is that we have started having weekly council district working group meetings. We've continued to have our weekly Monday working groups with delegates from each of the utilities and/or the stakeholders that we have involved, including a number of folks from public agencies and public groups and bodies. And that has been really, really helpful. We'll talk briefly here on the next slide on some of the focuses in districts A through E, but if you can go back to the previous slide, thank you. We have launched the internal version of a dashboard that captures all of the work that is ongoing for each of the stakeholders that have been involved. And today we will launch that publicly, and it's up and available on the city's website right now. We've developed a communication framework. I know Courtney Wong here in the audience has done a great job with our communications team of putting together a communications framework, and that has led to some ideas around standardized signage, and we're starting to see more of that with DPW. We're going to continue to see an increase in signage at work sites where we have road closures. There is already an ordinance governing that, but we are going to see some increased participation. I know some of our partners like Entergy has done a really good job already of getting flyers out in advance, and we want to see the rest of our utility partners and ourselves get to that level as well. Currently under legal review is a pavement cut policy. Our law department at the city has gone through and pulled together all of the legal background governing pavement cuts and management, and we are looking to add some language that will put in moratorium. So looking at 0 to 3 years, 3 to 5 years, 5 to 10, 10 plus on what cuts we can have in a city street after it's been paved, and working on increased collaboration and coordination around timing on paving and cuts thereafter. And then continuing those district coordination meetings, as I mentioned. And then I do want to note that Jonathan Wisby has joined us for the record as well. We go to the next slide, and if there are any questions at any point, please raise your hand or just throw something at me, or Aaron can help me monitor the board. So I mentioned on the previous slide the working group progress meeting with the individual council districts, and that's been really helpful in driving individual project initiatives. Again, the foundational premise behind this body and this group was to replicate what was taking place in advance of the Super Bowl. And so finding a rhythm that drives attendance and buy-in, this has been really helpful for us to have each council district on a rotating week. So today, after this meeting, District A will be meeting with District A at 3 o'clock this afternoon. Next week will be B, C, etc. And each of those districts has some unique focuses. The first being in District A, the Joint Infrastructure Recovery Request Program, and Bel Air Boulevard has been featured in a couple of our meetings. DPSO 1, which is that big project in the Lower Garden District, it's a major infrastructure project. And that has been really, I think, a good test case for us around coordination, because there's, and we may see it on a slide with the dashboard, there's a major stormwater project going on in that area, as well as sewerage and water board work, and a significant amount of work that Entergy is undergoing right now. And so that's been very, very helpful to have everyone in the room at the same time and knowing that we're going to circle back to this in a month's time. So we need to have good updates and good communication in the meantime and ready when we meet. District C, obviously Decatur, and that French Quarter project has been a major point of focus, and will continue to be here for the next two rounds that we meet with District C between now and September. And District D and E, there's a lot of focus on lighting. So the Lights On initiative continues to be really important, a key focus, and is something that we're going to continue to focus on, especially in all of our districts, but for D and E, it is significant. We go to the next slide. So today is the public launch of our ICC dashboard. So what we found when we first sat down in advance of our meeting in June, in the first several working groups, was that each of us as utility purveyors and as infrastructure partners, we all were tracking and maintaining data in a GIS format of some kind or another. And so being able to put all of that into one location has, I believe, been helpful for us as we're planning work. I'll use the illustration. There's a project in New Orleans East on Morrison Road. That project, being able to look at open sewage and water board work orders and being able to make repairs on things like we had a leaking fire hydrant, being able to do that before we got the paving put down has allowed us to avoid a future double cut in that location. So that website is up and available for review right now. That is at NOLA.gov/ICC. That's NOLA.gov/ICC, and there's a big tab on the bottom for comments. I would really love to see each of our stakeholders here, members of the public, anyone who's in the audience, media, etc. Please look at and comment on this. There's a couple of different, there is the internal purpose of this, being able to forecast and manage work internally, but also want to be able to report to each of our customers, stakeholders, and residents when and where there is work going on, upcoming, and have the ability for those who live and reside in New Orleans to understand where there is work taking place. If we go to the next slide, the communication framework, I mentioned earlier, we were talking about signage. There's been a lot of work within the subcommittee around communication, looking at a consistent approach. So now that we have all of the work mapped, being sure that we are communicating where that work is taking place, who is responsible, getting signage in place has been something that Courtney has been working on. And when we go to the next slide, we're looking at project signage. So as I mentioned earlier, there is an ordinance that has already been adopted. I believe Councilmember Harris sponsored that. But in support of that, we're trying to figure out how do we, in addition to putting flyers out, how can we develop consistent project signage so that folks know what sort of project is going on where? And starting with, there's a signage matrix that we'll be distributing and that members of the working group have already seen. So it's not a one-size-fits-all. We don't need a 4x8 billboard for each and every singular sidewalk repair or each and every water service, but just having something simple like a sandwich board or a campaign-type sign that shows the logo and some contact information for some of those really small projects, so that folks will at least know who's doing work where, so they can check in and figure out the timeline and the impact that an individual project may or may not have. Going into a little more depth on the pavement cut policy, there's sort of three key objectives that we're trying to achieve here. First is strengthening oversight. Secondly is to reduce repeat disturbances. And the third is to promote better planning and collaboration. And so all of the tools that we're talking about through these working groups is meant to ensure that these three things are taking place so that we can add some accountability. As we, in the Department of Public Works, the JRR program is coming to a close. So we are in a stance where we have to get out and manage the pavement that we have proactively and using more of our internal crews. We're up to just over 20 new paving personnel as of this week. We had three more start this week. We'll be at 28 by next Monday, with the goal of being having 50 new paving employees by the end of the year, and more than tripling the staff that we've got. And so with that, we'll have the ability to plan and schedule pavement maintenance so that we can then communicate that to all of our infrastructure stakeholders, whether it's Sewage and Water Board, AT&T, Entergy, et cetera. And with that plan, then our utility partners can plan their work in advance. So one of the key initiatives that I know the Sewage and Water Board is looking at is the lead service line replacement program. And so that'll be a really important opportunity for us to work together on those streets that really need to be resurfaced, whether it's patch mill overlay, full reconstruction, or just minor repairs, and being able to couple that with blocks that we know have a lot of lead service lines in them will allow us to put this pavement cut policy to good use so that we are ensuring we're making the cuts at the beginning of the project and not after the paving takes place. So the expectation here is that the legislative language, we do have a draft that's in review by our law department now. We will have that in place and before council between now and the next quarterly meeting that we have here at the end of the summer, beginning of the fall.
I have a question regarding.
Yes, please.
Do we do a condition assessment based on, I know we're going to have these employees that are brought on board, but how do we, I know we've talked about it, how do we rank those? A lot of times, I know the technology does exist where you can do a condition assessment, and while it may be expedient because we need to do this one according to a time, but it may be a little more costly to work on the base. So how do we evaluate that?
Great question. I'm glad you asked. So I believe it's advertised. We went over it this morning. It's going to hit the street here this week, I believe, and it'll be opened on July 30th. An actual assessment of the entire road network in Orleans Parish.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
So there is because it's got to start with that right now. Heretofore, it's kind of been ad hoc. This block needs work, so we're going to be here because we're getting a certain number of phone calls. The technology exists now to where we're familiar with the Waymo vehicles. And actually, we have some conversations. Jonathan and the group is talking to Waymo about doing pothole detection. There's technology now that uses laser scans and cameras to be able to assess the whole condition of the roadway and provide a scope of work for repair and a pavement condition index score, a PCI score.
Yep.
So with that data, that will help us figure out, all right, well, this is where we're going to be working next year, so that AT&T, you guys can say, yep, that overlaps with our program.
Absolutely. And the other thing is, if you're communicating with council members and they'll say, well, I want this fixed right now. Well, the budget, it may only fix 1 or 2 in this district if you're going to spread the money aside and no, this one really is going to be much more expensive than it is to just pass this one. It's just,
you're giving away my management strategy as we speak. No, I'm saying you're so spot on, because what you're talking about is exactly what we're trying to get to, and where this infrastructure coordinating council is really going to come to bear is when we know the condition of all of our roadways. Then we'll be able to plan out and answer those requests and understand. Just because we get a high number of 311 calls, it may be a priority, but it also may just be that's where the complaints are coming from. And just like you touched on, the rehabilitation of a particular block, that cost curve is not linear. If you get to a failure, there's a point where you can save a lot of money if you do the repairs on the front end. So having that information from this pavement condition assessment is going to be really, really important.
Well, and I'll end the level of question. As you do that, I probably would challenge some of my peers. That we probably need to coordinate and we've done some of it already, but condition assessment on poles and lines and things like that, because we are getting a lot of one-offs from various council offices on low-hanging lines, or we think this pole is leaning, or just different things, whether it's pedestals. If you're going to do condition assessments or have the Waymo methodology taking pictures and videos, if there could be some compilation, not, my people will probably have a fit with all the kind of work that may come about it. But if we can see some level of priorities,
Yeah.
and we're going to be working in a certain area, that can certainly add value for us from a coordination standpoint, rather than, again, every day or every other day, constituent service reps saying, hey, we got shoes over here on this line, we got a low, we don't know whose line it is, or any of that information on the front end that we can prioritize and coordinate would be helpful as well.
Absolutely, and you're bringing up a really good point. And Jonathan, when you talk to Waymo, could we add that to the talking points to see if there's a way to look at like the traffic poles or the wood poles, utility poles?
Sorry. Not enough time in the council diocese, I think. My Director of Enterprise Information, Eric Ogber, is actually talking with them tomorrow and hearing all this, so he'll make sure that we include that on the agenda with them and understand if that's a feasible outcome from that work.
Yeah, being able to proactively understand. Our customers should always call 311 when they see something, but for us to be able to inspect it proactively, I think is so much more powerful. In the last week, with the electricians and inspectors we've been able to hire, we're out canvassing neighborhoods for light outages, and what we found, we've canvassed the entirety of the lower Ninth Ward last week. We found 120 new lights out. Well, yes, that's going to add to our backlog, but the reality is the residents of that neighborhood know the lights out. The fact that we don't doesn't help them. So having an understanding of the reality of the universe of our infrastructure is more important than wishing things were better. Mr. Flower.
I know you don't have the response back yet, but do you have any sense of how long it will take?
The presentations that we've received are that it's a very quick turnaround. It's a matter of weeks, because these are the technology that we're seeking responses for is utilizing AI-driven engines, and it's not that you won't have a windshield survey component, but it's done quite rapidly.
And I know the Surge and Water Board is doing an assessment of their water transmission lines right now. Hopefully the two will get coordinated.
Well, absolutely. Even before this group, we've been working with DPW to try to coordinate, and we'll continue to do so.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I alluded to lead service lines. The same holds true. And I see Caitlin in the audience here talking through that Claiborne line, and how do we make sure that we're maximizing the investment in subsurface so that we're preserving the pavement above. And that's the intent of this whole policy and part of what we're doing. So yes, very good points made. Next slide. All right, so the next thing I wanted to touch on, the Public Utility Modernization Process Subgroup, or PUMPS. So given that there are so many infrastructure partners involved in this body, there are opportunities for us to be able to take on different initiatives, and looking at the mayor has asked for a review of Sewage and Water Board and how this body, the ICC, can support City Council. August 1st, legislation goes into place where City Council will have much more of an active role in the management of our water utility here in the city. And this PUMPS group, which has met twice, I believe, correct, LJ? Is working to come up with some recommendations on where legislation would be most effective, how to support the utility, how to support our customers, increase transparency, and all of the things that were part of Act 938. The membership of that council includes, or that group, excuse me, includes 2 council members, Jason Hughes, Amy McCarron, our own Aaron Spears, and CAO Geruso, myself. Megan Williams, the Deputy CAO for Resilience, is appropriately, or Sustainability, excuse me, is appropriately a part of that group, as is the superintendent, Caitlin Timberak of the board, Dr. Angela Chalk, Rashida Ferdinand, who are both key members of the community, and the water management of New Orleans, Poco Sloss, a former Sewage and Water Board Board of Directors member, as well as Peter Wagoner with GNO Inc., and then the Water Institute is represented by Bo Jones. So, as I mentioned, the next steps here as we get into August will be to vet legislative instruments. We're going to be looking at some initiatives going forward to, again, support the utility, increase transparency, and move forward. So, with that, looking ahead, next quarter priorities, we're looking to continue our weekly district working groups. We're going to finalize that communications framework and standardize signage. We want to finalize that pavement cut policy now that we have draft language and the city's legal department has compiled all of those disparate policies. And then we want to continue to strengthen cross-agency coordination and really do very much appreciate each of you for being here and each of the representatives that you have in our weekly meetings. I think those have been very, very productive. We've been able to keep them to an hour apiece, but I believe we've made some really good strides, and I'm looking forward to the dashboard moving forward, getting this pavement cut policy established, and continuing to increase coordination. With that, LJ, was there anything I missed? Questions, comments, concerns, or thoughts? None? Good, bad, otherwise? All right. Yes, sir.
Now, as we move through this process, what do you see as, are there any headwinds, anything coming that you feel like going to be a little bit more challenging that we may can get ahead of, at least put on our radar?
I think the next piece for us, as the JIRR program ends and we get this pavement assessment done, the management of pavement within Orleans Parish, because we don't have $1.5 billion in federal investment here, we're going to have to manage our pavement through a lot more patch mill and overlay. So full depth replacements, we may not have the budget wherewithal for that. So coordinating and maximizing limited dollars, that's where we're really going to start to see this body really come to bear. So as I get our pavement assessment done and we look at the bond issue and the dollars and cents for 2027, 28, and 29, I think there's a big opportunity for us there. And so staying engaged, making sure that each of the utilities stay engaged is really, really important. And then I know, Sandra, from a business standpoint, this corridors in New Orleans East, I think there's a major opportunity for us there to make sure that the business interests that are there or ones that are wanting to invest in that area, we need to be sure that we're aligning and using ICC to kind of leverage that as well. Yeah.
Of the bond issues that the voters approved,
Yep.
I think you've got your first tranche recently, so how much of that could be dedicated to this road work?
So of the $510 million that was sold, there was $30 million that was dedicated to affordable housing.
Approved. I don't think
Approved, excuse me, not sold. So the 510 that was approved, I believe there was just over 200 million or around 200 million related to streets type infrastructure, and then vertical facilities, stormwater and housing made up the bulk of that. And the first tranche that we sold was about 178 million, of which the bulk of that is roadway related work. And my instruction to the DPW team is we need to get that in the ground quickly and efficiently. We want to be moving that into construction and be finished with that as we get into the end of 27 and 28.
And on a little bit different subject, but how many people have you been able to add to DPW? I know you mentioned 5 electricians, but just...
Yeah, so when we started in January of this year, we had no electricians. So now we have 2 full-time electricians, 2 inspectors that are really leveraging that. We've also been able to hire on, as of this morning, 23 additional paving staff. So we've more than doubled the size of DPW. I mean, we still need to get to a place where we're 75 to 100 before we're really moving forward. And the numbers, the production that we're seeing is really going up as well. So sidewalk, we
Yeah.
started the year with a major press event around a 3x3 patch of sidewalk, and now we're doing 200 to 300 feet of sidewalk every week.
Well, the potential budget problems that have just arisen, will that affect what you're allocated to hire?
I don't know that it'll affect the allocations of what we're hiring, but for some of those larger standalone projects, so the bond issuance had pots for major and minor streets, and that's the bulk of what we're using for the hiring and salaries. There were some standalone roadway projects that, depending on where we have to go with the bond issue, those may have to get pushed out. Yeah. Anyone else? Any public comment? With that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all very much.